Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia, and welcome to Finding Connections to Science and Literacy Educator Roundtable today. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We have a few amazing educators with us today and some of my colleagues. But before we get started, just make sure to introduce yourself in the chat, say where you're from, what grade levels you work in. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Awesome. Welcome, Kentucky. Thanks, Emily. Oh, I see some people from Vegas, Angela. Oh, Ocean City, Maryland. I'm from DC.
New Zealand and Hungary. Wow.
Thank you to those international people. I have no idea what time it is there.
Colorado. That's where I'm from.
I see a few Californias. Yay.
Ellen, we might be the only Nebraska ones. I'm not seeing any Nebraska.
We will represent well. I'm also a Colorado girl, so and a Nevada girl.
Okay.
Welcome, Rebecca. Good to see you here.
Australia.
Seattle. Florida.
And it looks like so many people are introducing themselves. If you're just joining us now, everyone is just going into the chat and introducing themselves, saying what grade levels they work with, where they're from, and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to log in. And I'm seeing mostly K-5, so if there are any middle school teachers out there, make sure to introduce yourselves. Awesome. Thanks, Alexis. Awesome. We'll give it just one more minute.
I see Sacramento. That's where I'm from.
And I'm seeing a really big combination of gen ed and special education. That's awesome. All right. We'll get started just because I know it's either the very end of the school day or the middle of your day. So we don't want to take up too much time if we can't help it. So let's just get started and talk about a few logistics before we have it for our roundtable today. So a few things. We do have closed captions enabled already, so no need to do that. If you want to see those, all you have to do is click that CC button in the bottom tray. Just so you all know, you can participate at any time via the chat, but a lot of those things can get really mixed up and we just have so many things going. If you have any questions for our panelists today, please put those in the Q&A button. So if you see that in the bottom tray, and my amazing colleague Chelsea will make sure those questions are read aloud so that we can get to those. So if you have any of those questions, please put those there. And make sure to note that we will not be using the raise hand feature at all during today's webinar. Awesome. So at the end of today's webinar, you're also going to be receiving certificate of attendance and a recording. So if you need to pop out early at all today, no worries at all. I know you are all very busy educators. That is totally fine. Just pop out and look at the recording later. No worries. All right. So with that, I want to do the amazing job of introducing our educators today. So we have 4 panelists. They come from a bunch of different, slightly, some people closer than others places. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of them. So first, we have Ryan Rudkin. So you might know her if you are a really involved member of our Facebook community group, or if you listened to our Science Connections podcast. But let me go ahead and introduce her for you. So Ryan Rudkin is a middle school science educator, and she lives in near Sacramento, California. Although she originally thought she was going to teach elementary students, she connected with middle school and never looked back. She's now in her 17th year in the classroom. She also supports students and teachers in her districts with professional development. Her favorite part of teaching science is having students grapple with concepts and explore phenomena. Everyone make sure to welcome Ryan. She's amazing. All right, our next panelist is Ellen. She is incredible. She is out in Omaha, Nebraska. We have some great Nebraska support here today. So Ellen Kramer is currently a curriculum instruction facilitator, and she supports K-5 teachers and administrators in Millard Public Schools in Omaha, Nebraska. Her classroom experience includes teaching all subjects to pre-K through 5th grade students in Colorado, Nevada, and Nebraska. So I know Ellen has something in common with a few of our other panelists today. All right, our next panelist is Anya. And Anya, I never know how to pronounce your last name. Can you say that for us?
It took me about a year, but it's Covarrubias.
Yeah, I would have done that so wrong. Covarrubias. Awesome. Okay. So Anya, she's located in the Midwest, but she bounced around a lot from growing up, during college, and during her teaching career. She has big plans next year to expand and be an education consultant, so watch out as she does that. Her passion to share the transformative experience for all students with phenomena-based three-dimensional science education continues to grow. As a teacher, when she was implementing NGSS, it transformed her classroom. So as a coach, she watched it rejuvenate other science teachers' passion. As a curriculum coordinator, Anya has seen how high-quality science curricula and instructional science professional learning increase student engagement, success, and teacher confidence. When not talking about science, Anya is hanging out with her husband, 5 kids, and 2 fur babies. And she's a mom, and she loves cooking and being outside. She loves education and students and giving students the access and opportunity to be engaged and successful. Everybody make sure to include Anya with your welcomes. Finally, we have Angela. I loved Angela. We met pretty recently, but I know that she's out in Vegas, and this is her first year as like a full-on classroom educator, so make sure to give her some props, okay? So Angela Ross is a K-12 educator that recently discovered her passion for teaching. She was born in the Midwest and raised in the South, and she knows she had the opportunity to see and experience many approaches to education. Knowing the impact a caring and knowledgeable teacher can make to her students, she purposely took her skills to Title I schools, first in the metro Atlanta area and then to Las Vegas. Angela firmly believes all children can learn, but not in the same way or at the same rate. Teachers have to approach students in the ways that set them up for success. She approaches teaching with a literacy first mindset. When not in the classroom, she's traveling the world or curled up reading a good book. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Awesome. Before I continue and get started with our questions and we get into our conversation, I quickly want to shout out my colleagues that are here today. So first we have Shannon and Ryan on our team. They'll just be in the background if you notice them. They can help out with any questions you might have, and they'll just be monitoring the chat. And then we also have Chelsea. She's going to make sure all of your questions are answered. So make sure to put your questions into the Q&A and click that button. All right, so let's get started with our conversation. Awesome. So a question for all 4 of you. Can you share a little bit about your school community that you work with? And you can jump in at any point. I know you're all going to be really timid at first.
I can go first. Our school community is spread out a little bit. We're at a public charter school. And so most of our students do live in the neighborhood where my school is located, but we do have students as far as maybe if you travel, I don't know, half an hour away or so. So we have kids kind of spread out all over. And my school is a K-8 school. And so that lends itself to good conversations, talking with the elementary teachers and then the middle school teachers, as far as like how we're using Amplify and just how we can make connections for the kids.
I'll jump in. I'm Ellen and I am in Omaha, Nebraska. I work with Millard Public Schools and we have approximately 24,000 students in our district, PK-12. I personally serve 11,000 elementary students, and I apologize, I'm in cubicle land, so I apologize if there's background noise. I serve 25 elementary buildings, predominantly in the areas of science, social studies, and health, but it's just about good teaching as well. And we have 35 buildings overall.
Good, how are you?
So I am just a couple hours away from Ellen in Grand Island, Nebraska, and we have just under 10,000 students at our public school here. And we are about 60% of our student enrollment is minority population, and about 52% of our students are economically disadvantaged. And so it is, predominantly been a white community. And so it's, really posed a lot of interesting challenges that the community has been working through. And so really thinking through what education looks like in the future and how to best serve our student population.
Okay, I am in the Las Vegas area, CCSD. We are the largest school district in the Nevada area. We are a majority minority population. We are a majority Title I population. My school that I work at is a Title I school with just under 500 students. And most of the students do live in the community. And it is, we work hard to provide everything that we can for our students to give them the best education that we can. And sometimes that includes providing school supplies and other services. But there are lots of programs that can help us with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. So getting into our topic today about literacy and science connection, our first real question addressing that, let's get into why you think this is going to be really broad, and I totally understand that. So why you think it's important for literacy and science to work together.
I'll dive in on that. One of the things that, as an early childhood educator, that's where my undergraduate work was, is we really think about all learning is social, and it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And then when you start to connect that to what our pillars of communication are, which is reading, writing, listening, and speaking, you do that no matter what you're learning about. You are gathering that information and using those communication tools. So I think it's critically important that when we're talking about science teaching and learning, hand in hand, we are also talking about literacy instruction and how to support those kids and being able to communicate and making their thinking visible.
I love that, Ellen. Yeah, I think my perspective around literacy really changed in the past 3 years. As a curriculum coordinator, I work on a team. So I'm the science person, there's an ELA person, there's a math person, and we kind of come together weekly for meetings. And so I've gotten to learn a lot about the literacy side of things. And so what you're talking about, the things that I knew were important in science, I've heard, but also this piece around literacy and the importance of the background knowledge that the students need in order to be, high ability readers, right? And, if you put something science down in front of me, I'm going to be able to read that extremely well and comprehend it and remember what I read. you put something baseball down in front of me and I read that, I'm not going to comprehend it because I know nothing about baseball. And so I didn't understand that background knowledge was so important in literacy in general. And so science being such an important content, now I really see the connection of how science builds that background knowledge and is such an important aspect of literacy.
You just had so many people in the chat just jumping in saying similar things. Like someone said background knowledge right before you said it. That was incredible.
I'll add on there, someone in the chat talked about communication, and I think just teaching the kids that, to communicate, you instantly think of talking or having a conversation with someone, but through written work, there's a lot of importance, put on communication, and just to give the kids a different way to communicate, I think is important, and to point that out to them and help them understand that is, I think, important.
I think I might have lost my video, but one of the key parts of it for me is literacy is, again, how they build background knowledge. It's also how they learn to make connections, because one of the things they're taught through literacy is make connections to yourself and make connections to the text. And by doing, as they read, they're able to key in on what their interests are, or the parts of it that are they're able to find their own takeaways. Instead of the teacher always directing the learning, always directing the knowledge, it allows them to build their own knowledge base, and it allows them to kind of build their own schema versus us having to say everything and explicitly teach things. And it also builds critical thinking, because you have to take this information and you can't just keep the information the way it was given to you. As you read, you have to synthesize this information and put it back out. And that's one of the most important parts of why literacy is so important in science.
Oh, I just noticed a great question in the chat. So make sure that you're putting all of your chat questions into the Q&A button, because I think we'll have time to answer those questions near the end. Thanks so much, everyone. All right, going into our next question. I know Ellen and I have talked about this a little bit, and just about how we have a toolbox of things that we use within our practice, and sometimes you need to dip into those. What have you noticed are some of the tools that you've used in both literacy and science classrooms? Because I know some of you teach science specifically, some of you teach all content areas, some of you work with only science teachers, and some of you work with all teachers.
So I noticed right away, we actually implemented CKLA and Amplify Science, and we noticed, well, actually our teachers noticed right away that there was grade level topics from the science standards that were used as the background kind of knowledge concepts that were used in CKLA. And so right away, like there was that connection. And so there was this multiple meaningful experience that students were getting. And just we've seen a lot of science growth that I've shared with you, Sophia, that I really feel like having those multiple exposures that students are getting are really helping our students be successful in not only their reading and in literacy, but also in science.
One of the things that we also did within our district is we have monthly curriculum meetings with our administrators, as well as teams of, we call our science leads, science ambassadors at the elementary level. And one of the things we were trying to do, we know that English language arts and mathematics are usually the heavy hitters for a lot of what takes precedence for professional learning and otherwise. And so we were really trying to build the bridge between what is good instruction, no matter what content area you're teaching, and how can we still fit in science and social studies through really relevant and authentic learning experiences. So we approached our administrators with thinking in terms of what do we currently have in our toolkits that kids can use, and maybe they're learning in mathematics or in English language arts. And I know that Ryan mentioned before we started the webinar that Ryan was mentioning the RACES strategy, and our elementary teachers use that within their reading instruction. And it's RACES, if you are not familiar with it, it stands for restate, answer, cite, extend and explain, and then summarize. So it's something that kids are familiar with using in their ELA block of learning. And it's okay for our teachers to say, hey, that's a strategy that works here. Let's apply it when we're doing science instruction. And some of our teachers have really been embracing that quite a bit. The other thing in mathematics is we have math talks or talk moves that we really encourage teachers to use, because in order to get kids truly writing and communicating about science, they have to be able to generate some thoughts about the topic, whatever it is that they're working on. And then in social studies, we connected it to historical thinking skills and how you source something and you find the corroboration for it, where you're comparing different sources of information and you're analyzing those things. Claims, evidence, and reasoning can also come into science, although Amplify Science uses reading, do, talk, read, write, visualize. Those blend beautifully with whether you call it claims, evidence, and reasoning, RACES, or just as simply with a kindergartner is like, show me what you're thinking or tell me what you're thinking. So I think starting from looking at what are we already using that works really well in every content area, you don't have to have a new trick. You need to apply the really good, solid tricks and tools that work everywhere.
I think going off of what Ellen just said, one thing that came to my mind in addition to the RACES writing would be having guided instruction on annotation and how to teach the kids how to annotate their reading and how to pinpoint, not just pull out the facts, but just, look at the big picture of the article or whatever it is that they're reading and pull out the main ideas and then use that as evidence in your CER or RACES writing. It's important to help the students just gain confidence to be able for them to do that on their own.
One of the things that I use in my science that where science and ELA overlap are my discussion procedures. My students have to be able to, again, use the RACES method, restate the question, or the claim method, whichever one you want. But they have to be able to restate the question or give me a claim about what we've read, what we're discussing. You have to give me the answer. You have to cite your evidence, and you have to make that connection or explain to that. And we don't just go on until we don't just go past everything. You have to explain before we can go on. So using those discussion methods that I use for ELA in science has been tremendous because the kids have to explain. It just does my heart so well when I see them go, hold on, Miss Ross, I have to find the page so I can tell you the page number and the paragraph where I saw that. And they'll flip through, and as they're giving the page and paragraph, the other students join in and they flip through so that they can see and tell me whether or not they agree. And we use hand signals for agreement. Also we use our partner reading that we use for reading. We use that for our science books also. My students are expected to talk to your partner when you read, and the basics of reading. Look at the cover, do a walkthrough of the book really quickly. See make a prediction of what you think is going to happen and what the outcome of this book is, or at least what the topic of the book is. And as you read, stop, uh, see if your prediction is going to come true, or where you are with your prediction, or where you are at least with the topic of the book, and go through these reading procedures with your partner. And again, give me evidence, make the connection, because your partner might not have the same experience that you have. So if you just tell me something or tell your partner something, they might not understand. If you explain how what you said connects to what you read or to your evidence, your partner has an understanding and you have an understanding, and then you can have a discussion and not a fight.
And I love how all of you were mentioning different tools in your toolboxes, and so many people in the chat were mentioning theirs as well, like turn and talk and all of these routines. And if you haven't shared them, you can also share those in the chat. I'd love to personally see them. And now that we've talked about the tools, I almost got off track and started asking Angela a separate side question, but no, we're going to keep going. Now that we've talked about the tools, I wanted to hear about your teams, because you couldn't do this without your teams, right? You are all science experts, or you're teaching multiple content areas. So I would love for you all to talk about your experience working alongside your ELA teams within your school or district. If you are working with other people, for example, I know Angela, she is K-5 and she's teaching everything, so it might be a little different. What has been the most impactful for you with this partnership?
I know I work real closely with my language and literature teacher for my sixth graders. And I'm very honest that with my students, even that I'm not very confident in my reading and writing, my ability to teach reading and writing. So I lean on my language and literature teacher a lot. And like I said, we use the racist writing, and then with Amplify, the students get a little hung up sometimes. Sorry about that. The students get hung up sometimes on the acronyms, and I just have to explain to them that it really does connect with what we're doing with Amplify. You have your claim, and then we have evidence along the way, whatever it might be, and then you're going to have your reasoning to support and to explain your claim. And so I definitely lean on my language and literature teacher a lot.
I think for us, we have a small but mighty team of curriculum and instruction facilitators within our district. I have a colleague, Jody Simpek, who is responsible for leading the curriculum for English language arts, and a colleague, Matt Scott, who leads the cycle for mathematics. And then I do the other topics. And then we also have a literacy intervention and early childhood specialist that works with us, Cheris Kite. And we all work together as a close-knit team, and we really look at things holistically as well as individually. And I think that that's an important thing, especially at elementary school, because most teachers at elementary teach it all. And in order to do that and to do it well, you cannot silo the skills and the concepts and get through a year of your standards. And also, that's not a good way to teach, because kids don't learn things in a vacuum. And we really want to make sure that when they are learning how to read, they're also applying those how to read skills to everything that they're doing, and not just saying, oh, well, reading is over, so I'm going to go back to only reading the pictures, and I'm not going to really use the skills that I know my teacher has taught me. So I think it's really important, even if you're at middle school or high school, to have those conversations with people who are outside of your content area, as well as those really important conversations within. And I'll just say one more thing that I think is really impactful as well is when you think about what we all really want for kids, we want them to be expert learners, and we want them to be purposeful and motivated, and we want them to be strategic and goal oriented, and we want them to be resourceful and knowledgeable. And so how do we get them there? As a content expert, I know Anya has done amazing things in the world of science and science education. Yet I also know that she has utilized, it's like, I need my kids to get here. And in order for them to do this within science, they need to know how to listen to one another. I know that she incorporates those skills and there's a great book. It's called The Language of Learning. And it's really teaching the language of learning, essential skills of listening and speaking and questioning and arguing from evidence and agreeing and disagreeing. And it lays it out in ways that are simple and bite-sized pieces, but something that you can incorporate into an academic lesson so that they can support one another rather than, and I know that I think it was Ryan that was talking about this maybe earlier, I can't recall, but you know, how instead of kids arguing, like fighting about their ideas, they're arguing from evidence, and they're not only answering questions, but they're questioning the answers, and they're doing it in respectful ways. So I think you have to have that blend, and that blend comes from the world of reading, writing, listening, and speaking.
Okay, my district rolled out Amplify this year. As a new teacher coming in, it was a lot. I had to learn several systems all at once. But what I will say is they have offered support for Amplify. And specifically here in my building, my principal is wonderful. Anything that you can ask for, if she can get it, she will get it for you. If you can argue the case, even if she can't get it, she will figure out how to get it. So I love my principal. My team, my third grade, I teach third grade. My third grade team, and as a matter of fact, my whole school, a lot of people would not have listened to a new teacher because this is my first full year teaching. A lot of people will not have listened to someone new coming into the district. But when I explained myself and explained my approach, my team was happy to come aboard and say, yes, let the new teacher write the science plans and lead us through this science and help us approach it. And I've even had other teachers come along and support and ask for help. I just thought that was wonderful. Usually a new teacher is pushed aside or pushed to the back, but in this building, I'm respected, I'm loved. They come, they ask questions and ask for help. And they also offer help in other things because once it was pointed out, the literacy aspect of Amplify, they were able to show me things that they've learned over the years that build on literacy, and we can use the tools from Amplify in these literary tools, and we can help our children even more. So I am loving my job right now.
One thing I'll add to is a lot of times I'll get updates from our language and literature teacher about the district data and the assessments that they're doing in language arts. And so to keep tabs on students that are struggling with their reading ability, or the ones that are maybe right on the bubble, on the edge of going into the next category with their reading ability. And so then I can do what I can do in my class to help them, improve their literacy scores and just their overall ability to read. I think that's important to keep tabs and check in with your team teachers.
So Julie actually mentioned in the chat what I was going to talk about here, specifically with middle school teachers. I've had the opportunity to work with our ELA curriculum coordinator to plan professional learning. So we had a lot of feedback from science teachers specifically that they were not reading teachers, and that there was, all these like close reads, and why do we have to read articles twice in Amplify Science, and it's a waste of time. And there really was a genuine purpose for this. And, there was for each read specifically that students needed to do both of those. And so she really sat down with me and helped me understand what that strategy was for, and helped me build something that wasn't science, that allowed the teachers to really put on that student hat and go through the experience of having the closed read and the benefits of having that closed read. And we've done a couple of different things like that. That's just one example. So I was able to lead that professional learning experience for our teachers, which was really impactful. And then we do our summer work for K-5 teachers at the same time, and our pacing guides are the same. And so we've really been able to piggyback off of, since the content is similar with CKLA and Amplify Science. For instance, in 4th grade, they get sedimentary rocks pretty close to the same time. And so we've been able to like narrow up our pacing and allow for more time. And so teachers can really kind of, combine that like science and ELA time to kind of leverage off of each other and just open up some more space in their day. And like Ellen was saying, it's not a vacuum, right? And so that students can see those cross-curricular connections and really get the most out of what they're engaging in their day. And just so thankful to be able to see these connections and help our teachers to see these connections. And it's just been really great for our students.
Now I see Michelle in the chat. She just mentioned something that I'm about to talk about in 2 questions. So I will go back to it in a second. But thinking about the impact that it's had, had a follow-up question for all of you, which is really just about a time where you saw a real synergy of science and literacy. And I'm specifically thinking first for an experience Angela had with her partner teacher that also teaches 3rd grade that you told me about. But you don't have to go first, Angela. It's okay.
I can pop in on there. For me, I really appreciate the articles and the reading that's provided by Amplify. The students are instantly interested. And even if you have a student that might be a low reader or just reading's not their favorite, the topics of the articles and in the overall topics of our units are engaging, and that alone will get the kids a little bit interested. And just using that, and a lot of the articles I try to connect to what, something in our community or something in real life. Right now we're doing oceans and atmospheres, and there's an article about comparing the temperature of Seattle versus Minneapolis, and the temperatures of the ocean and how it impacts the temperatures of the land. And so here in near Sacramento, we have really nice weather. And so just making connections with what we're learning in the article and then just something that's happening in real life. And then, bringing it back to the written piece. And then that way, helping the students with their annotations. And then Angela talked about with their conversations and helping them be, better communicators. And it's so encompassing, all of it. And it stems back from having good content for the kids to really look at. I think that's important.
I would agree with what Ryan just said, that the articles and the books, the partner reading structures that are in Amplify Science really help to, in the elementary world, help a teacher to support a child's literacy instruction within their English language arts block, if they have blocks of time that they're working on things. And I've seen teachers use their morning meetings to introduce vocabulary that they know they'll do it through a game, and the kids are kinesthetically getting a concept, and then she's sliding in this vocabulary word in their morning meeting that they've done with their greeting activity, and then they use it later on during the day during science. I've also seen teachers take it and utilize the books that are within the Amplify Science units during their small group reading instruction. If you know what skill you are trying to teach the kids, whether it's a phonics skill or it's looking at perspective or its author's purpose or any of those things, you can apply those to these wonderful pieces of literature that Amplify has provided for us. So I think teachers also need to, and administrators also need to understand that teaching that reading you can take pieces of Amplify from the reading and incorporate it beautifully into what you are doing in reading and writing. And it doesn't usurp what your curriculum materials are within the context of reading and writing. It supplements and it supports. And it also helps you to find those little precious moments during the day where you otherwise would feel like, I don't have enough time to teach this. So it's thinking about where can you double up, and you can teach that reading skill or that writing skill, and you can get in some of your science content.
Right.
I think the story you were asking about, Sophia, was when one of my colleagues approached and they were having trouble with Amplify. And I asked her what subject she liked to teach, and she said reading. I said, well, okay, approach it from a literacy aspect. Look at it. We have our books. We have all of the content that Amplify provides, and it has the same standards that our ELA has. You have cause and effect. You have finding evidence to support. You have the main idea. And if you approach it from that aspect, you're still teaching science. And it's probably gonna, because she likes literacy, the kids are probably gonna buy into it more because she's gonna buy into it more because she's actually teaching something she likes. And I also mentioned to her about the flow chart to help her with making sure that she understood the phenomena that we're discussing with each section, and also help her understand what ideas that she's supposed to pull from the books to emphasize with the kids, or what the kids should be learning at each point from the text that Amplify provides. And that helped her a lot as she progressed through it. And then another teacher, we just switched. She liked teaching reading. So I taught her kids science, and she taught my kids reading. But if you're in Las Vegas, don't repeat that. My principal doesn't know that part.
But I love that you switched rooms just to like also switch up the kids, because you're with the same kids all day too. So that way you just saw new experiences. It's great. I love it. All right, going into our next question. So I will be looking at Ryan while I read this out loud, because we'll be talking about middle school a little bit. So have you noticed any differences between integrating science and literacy at the middle school versus elementary levels? So I know that someone in the chat was recently asking about how it's a little frustrating when you realize a lot of your students are behind in ELA, and what should you do, Ryan? I'm also thinking about how often you're meeting. So anything you could share, Ryan, that would be great.
One thing when I saw that in the chat about background knowledge is for me, and I'm in middle school, so my class periods are about 52 minutes. And again, starting with the articles, if there's something that the kids are just really interested in, then I'll go to YouTube and just pull up a quick, 3-minute or 5-minute video on whatever topic or whatever it is in the article, just to kind of help them with a little bit of background knowledge if there's something that they're really interested in. Again, and I know there is, oh, my light went off. There is one moment. My light went off in my classroom. I'm in my classroom.
Very
Sorry.
classic teacher move right there.
I know. I know there was something in one of the questions about when you have colleagues that make comments about, that I don't want to teach literacy, or I'm not a language arts teacher, I'm a science teacher. And, I think back early in my career, we did lab write-ups, and, I would just expect the kids to write a conclusion or write an analysis, but I never gave them guided instruction on how to do that. But you just expect them to be able to do it, and you put it on the language arts teacher, and it's really everyone's job to help them build their writing skills and with their communication skills and their reading skills, and just having a little more explicit instruction in your classroom will help the science be even stronger, and having the students able to understand the concept even more. I think you asked about how often do I meet with my team? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I just like speaking from my own experience, I know I met with my PLCs, that's what we call them, pretty frequently, like every week. Do you do the same?
I mean, we have a lot of informal meetings. We talk a lot about the students and their progression in our classes. And like I said, I check in quite frequently on how my students are doing with their the district assessments that they have to do. If I know if the students have mostly with the district assessments and then the state testing data, we look at that also to really focus in on, if I can pull like 5 or 6 kids and have them in the front of my mind, knowing that they have some low reading levels, then I'll definitely keep an eye on them and, try to give them a little more attention while we're doing, annotations and just making sure that they don't get left behind. So yeah, we definitely, I don't, as far as having regular meetings, we really don't have that, I would say, but I'm in contact a lot with my language arts teacher, definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. If anyone else wanted to jump in, you absolutely can. Wasn't prohibiting you from saying anything. But just because of time, I know our next question we've kind of talked about a lot, and it's just about where you've seen literacy integration within Amplify Science. We have like 2 more minutes if you want to share any other instances about do talk, read, write, visualize, anything like that that has really stood out to you.
One of the things that I noticed when we were first implementing Amplify Science, which was actually during 2020, which we had our teachers started in, they were in person, but our families had the option to either have their children be remote learners or in-class learners. And so our teachers did it all with that. And some of the things that we really hung our hat on was when you look through the coherence flow chart, and I've seen that mentioned in the chat a couple of times now. It's a really wonderful resource. And also when you look at the way the lessons are structured is for those multiple at-bats, where it's, some people call that redundant, but it's purposeful repetition. It's giving purposeful practice for the students and giving them opportunities. Especially, I also saw some questions about how do you get these kids to read these books when they're way below the grade level? And part of it, I think, are the scaffolds that are already built into Amplify, where it's those multiple at-bats opportunities for kids to actually read the content more than one time. It can be done in read alouds, it can be done in partner reads, it can be done in so many different ways. And then also the other scaffolds are things like they've got the sentence frames for the kids already there. They're already integrated. So when you think about scaffolds, and I don't know if it's the same in middle school, but I think that when you've got learners who may be struggling, a simple sentence frame can work for any age, and it can help them to feel successful. And so you build the bridge, and help them to make their way across so that they can feel confident and then build into that, and to not shortchange the kids on having conversations multiple times. To you, it might seem like it's the same conversation that you're asking them to have that they had yesterday. But if you really look at the questions and how you're guiding them through the discovery, teachers who do this well, they don't give away the mystery. They allow the kids to construct the knowledge, and they allow themselves to guide it through questioning before they say, I'm just going to tell you, I'm just going to fill, you're a little plant and I'm going to water it all over your little head, and it's gonna, it's just gonna seep in. I think that you really have to focus on those multiple at-bats and really give those kids that opportunity.
That's the hardest part though, Ellen, to facilitate and not just tell them the answer. That's the hardest part. And I know Anya and I have had a conversation about the science seminars before and how difficult those are to implement. I'm glad Ryan wants to mention it. Have you noticed anything changing since the last time we talked about that?
The science seminar is hands down my favorite. And I say that every single unit, and my students think I'm a crazy woman, but the science seminars are absolutely my favorite. It just culminates everything that they've been learning for the past few months in a unit. And like Ellen had talked about, you had said something, they take the evidence and and they have to take all that and then they put it all together and then they're connecting it to something new. And at the end of it, and I whenever I have my science seminar, by the way, I always invite my my principal to come check out things during the day. I send an email to my district superintendent and curriculum director to, we're having our science seminar, please come by if you're able to. And usually they try to pop in to see the kids in action. And that's what I tell the students. I said, you know this information, you've worked so hard, and they've done all the work, they've put in so much hard work, and it's just amazing to showcase it. And when during the journey, it's hard for them, but they're doing the hard work and it pays off when they have that science seminar and they're using evidence and just putting together and connecting all the dots. And the science seminar is definitely my favorite. And one more thing, Ellen, I was thinking about the reasoning tools. That's another tool that the students can use to gather all their evidence, and then they kind of get organized before they write their final argument. So that's another way that they can, the teachers can really help them with their reading and their writing skills.
Amazing. So with that, we only have a couple. Oh, go ahead, Angela. Go ahead.
Okay, for me, the connections between Amplify Science and literacy, one of the proudest moments of my career, short as it is, was when we were discussing the very first book in third grade Amplify, the about force and motion, the little girl riding the hoverboard. And as we're discussing it, without any prompting from me, my students were able to make a connection between the cause and effect. The girl ran into the fence, and that was the girl ran into the fence, and that caused her to stop. That stopped her forward motion. And after one student made that connection, several students, every time there was a stop of motion, every cause and effect in that book, they all bought into it. And they were all trying to find the next one as they read the book. And I see everyone keeps talking about the literacy and emerging readers. My kids, I think 3 of them, 20 kids, 3 might have been reading at grade level when they walked in. I do love the books because if you are like me, post-COVID children, they do not watch PBS. They watch Japanese anime and they watch TikTok. And I couldn't even convince them to turn the closed caption on TikTok. So at least they're seeing words. But they did make a connection with the books from Amplify, especially starting with that very first book, because a lot of them have hoverboards. And once that connection was made, they came through the struggle of reading the book. I purposefully partnered them. I purposefully partnered them with people who could read slightly better than them within their frustration levels. And they worked on that. Also, Amplify provided the books on YouTube and also the readers inside of the Amplify platform. So my really babies that were struggling, closed caption and YouTube. That way they could interact with the book at their own pace and they still gained the knowledge, but they could build their confidence with no one trying to tell them, you missed this word, you missed this word. So while everyone was partner reading, those who had the most struggle, they could comprehend, but they could not read at all. They came back to the group with the same knowledge as those who read and were still able to discuss. And I just did what I needed to do in literacy to keep bringing them along, bringing them along.
I love that, Angela. Thank you for sharing it. So we only have a couple of minutes, but I do want to open it up to our Q&A for however much time that we have. So Chelsea, do we have any questions in the Q&A or in the chat that you've noticed? Oh no, your sound isn't working.
Hi again.
There we go.
It keeps trying to switch on me. Thank you so much, Sophia. Yes, we've had a few questions come in through the Q&A and also in the chat. I do see that some of them have already been answered. So thank you so much to our panelists for jumping in there. Julie asked about how do we get those content teachers on board whenever we're asking more work from them. And you guys can see the Q&A where Anya just gave an answer with some helpful resources. It looks like Ryan's also typing right now. So thank you so much to our panelists. Anya shared that they've had great success by putting teachers in the student hat during professional learning experience. She also shared her facilitator notes. So you guys can go to the Q&A, you can see that right there. In addition to that, we had another question come in that is still open in the chat. Olivia asked that they're piloting science and literacy enrichment programs for 2nd and 3rd graders. It's a classroom, but they only have 12 hours total. So she's asking for some impactful practices that they can implement considering the limited time and inability to build practices over time the way that a regular classroom teacher would. Do any of our panelists have anything that they'd like to add? Maybe an answer to that for Olivia? See, there's a lot of processing of it right now.
One of the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I'm one of those groups that we only do science on Fridays. So we have limited time. And one of the things that helped was knowing the platform and the tools available. And I was able to take the flow chart, the information from the flow chart, and some of the things that Amplify the slideshows, I had to customize them a little bit to meet the needs of my time. It also helped that I used a lot of my ELA procedure. When we first got started, I used my ELA procedures with my class for Amplify, my discussion procedures, my writing procedures. That saved me a lot of time with coming up with new procedures. And also, again, I'm grateful to my principal because we use a focus board before each subject. The Amplify lined up with what they were already expecting me to do. So I do have a little bit of an advantage. But one of the other things that helped also with just Fridays is the discussion is there. I listen to my students when I am seeing that they are able to understand and paraphrase or take the information and make it their own and give me something completely new, then the repetition is there for a reason. But some things I might adjust this slide a little bit because I know they have this portion of it. They got the information that they were supposed to get according to the flow chart from this, and this. And 90% of my class is ready to go, so I can adjust it just a little bit to give myself and my students time to work on something that maybe they don't have. And that's just it costs me a little bit more time, but it keeps them engaged because there is a frustration point on the repetition. So I have to be cognizant of my class and their behaviors and making sure that they're doing that. I'm listening when they're discussing and I'm participating. Like you said, I saw someone in the chat say they lead the discussion. I just facilitate, but I also have to make sure I actually listen to the answers.
I would piggyback off of what Angela is saying, that I also put in the chat the K-5 Unit Essentials document, because that was one of the things in our first year to give you a broad perspective of what are the practices that are really being looked at within this unit and what's the writing genre. There are a lot of places, for example, in kindergarten, the needs of plants and animals. It tells you the student role. They're going to be scientists. They're going to be working on investigation in this unit. They need to understand the cross-cutting concept of systems. So you're going to be working on that, and you're setting a purpose for the sense-making strategy. So that in itself, along with the coherence flow chart, are two really great resources to help support a teacher. The other thing, and I hope I don't have a brain hiccup now because there was something else I wanted to add on to what Angela was saying. The slide decks. Our first year since we were in the pandemic, the slide decks are wonderful, but they are not the teacher. And I think the teachers that dove in and just followed the slide deck and clicked on it and robotically went through it were the teachers who got bored and the students who got bored. Whereas when you know from the co-parents flow chart and you're planning 5 lessons ahead, you can take those slides, still use them, but condense them, consolidate them, because a lot of those things are your talking points or your guiding questions. You don't need another slide for that. You need to know what it is that you're going to teach, and then just put the important slides up there that really have a bigger bang for their buck with the kids. But I love what Angela is saying in the ways that she approaches this. It's spot on.
And I don't want to cut anyone off, but I know that we are out of time officially. So we have one more slide that I want to share some announcements from Amplify for everyone that's still here. Thank you. If you had to leave because you had things to do, I totally understand. This is me in the recording saying hi. But here are some announcements. I know that Ryan has just placed those in the chat as well. If you want to click on those links, thank you so much. So all of these things, you can access free resources at your fingertips right there for you. You can learn more about Amplify Science if you're not a user already. You can dive into our program overview, or you can watch me next week give an overview of the program. That will be me again. And you can listen to Science Connections. Make sure to check out Ryan's episode from season 1. And if you need any free resources for Earth Day, check us out. We have those ready for you. So we'll stay for a couple more minutes for any questions that you might have. But thank you so much. I had an amazing time listening to all of these goodies from not just our panelists, but people in the chat. I know that everyone, all of our panelists were responding, and we appreciate that. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.